Hello and welcome to Live Coding Happy Hour for February 1st, 2019. I'm Dave Slusher. I am joined with my colleague, Josh Nerius, co-founder of this shambling mess that we call Live Coding Happy Hour. Welcome, Josh.
It's good to be back. It's been a long time.
The prodigal son returns. What we're going to do today, I don't actually know enough. My background should be Madrid. I think it's Madrid. The Google Images said it was Madrid. Somebody from Spain may know more than I do. But we're going to celebrate Madrid with the product manager of Integration Hub, who is quite knowledgeable in Flow Designer and Integration Hub stuff. And I'm going to take some of the existing things that I have, and we're going to Madridify them with some of the cool Flow Designer features, some of which I have been waiting for a really long time. So let us now get into our longer introduction, my friend.
Oh, yeah. So let's see. What am I doing these days? Yeah. So like Dave said, I am the product manager here at ServiceNow for Integration Hub, and I look after some other things like platform authentication. And it's been so incredibly long. I can't even remember. I was thinking about this, and it's got to be at least 6 months. I can't remember if I've joined since I left.
I don't think there has been a You and Me show in a year.
That's crazy. Yeah, it was.
I think you were on with somebody else.
The 29th of January was my official transfer date. So it's been a while.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. And I'm Dave Slusher, developer advocate at ServiceNow, developer.servicenow.com. Ding, if you want to go and get a Madrid instance. However, we know at this very second, like 5 minutes ago, Madrid instances were out. I think we need to replenish the pool there a little bit.
If
you don't mind, mention that to Jack while we're on this thing.
I'll ping him now.
If you don't mind. So like I said, we're going to go, we're going to pull up one of my favorite demo apps, possibly my very favorite demo app is my travel tracker. And I've got some stuff that I do with a workflow that I want to turn this workflow off once and for all. And I want to move it over to Flow. And I've been waiting for certain features to make that possible. And so we will walk through that. If that doesn't take too long, if we got extra time, then we may play around with some of the other things that are available. But Madrid is a pretty meaningful release in the Flow Designer world. Do you want to actually, even before we start, Josh, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the features? You want to do a quick overview of just like bullet point top level? I'm springing this on you at the very last second. So
yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. But before we do,
a man with his eye on the format.
So this week I've been saving it. I got it for Christmas. It's a Maplewood Son of Juice India Pale Ale. That's like saying
ATM machine.
Yeah, thank you. I'm rusty. It's been a long time. I don't even have my whole setup. My mic's just sitting here like a savage. Anyway.
And I've got a Sweetwater Exodus, kind of this I think it's the Bob Marley themed thing. It's a Jamaican coffee porter.
And it's partially transparent because of your green screen.
Oh, there you go. Are we seeing Madrid? Through me. It's a hole that's going through me and Madrid. Interestingly enough, I have two. I have like a warm and a cold Americano. And then roughly 1/3 of the beers in my beer fridge are some form of like coffee stouts and coffee porters. So we're coffeeed up here.
Nice. Very nice.
I guess what I'm saying. Okay.
So Madrid features. I will not claim to say every one of them, but there's a lot of stuff. Okay. We have been doing a lot of work in trying to get Flow closer to parity with workflow. And we believe that we're at a point where we can meet most workflow use cases, probably a very significant percentage. And so we have features like do until, which is I can run a loop until some condition. You don't have to loop over a known number of things. You can loop over an unknown number of things, which is super cool. New feature for decision tables and this concept of decision trees, which lets you make some really cool conditionals within your flows and start decoupling some of your conditions from business logic, that sort of thing. There's an end action, which lets you end the flow. There's new APIs for calling flows, subflows, and actions from scripts, both client-side and server-side. So it's a lot of cool stuff there. In the Integration Hub side, we've got a new SOAP step, new support for password 2, a payload builder for generating XML and JSON. There's a lot of stuff. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see as we look at some of your workflows, how some of those features might help to move you over.
All right. Fantastic introduction. And with that, let me take a second here. It's always a little tricky. I'm running the full show here today, so I'm pressing all the buttons and driving. So there's a lot of moving parts. So what I should have done is I should have started sharing while you were talking, but I was not that on the ball.
I see your screen.
All right. And let me take 1 second. And if you have anything else you want to talk about for 1 second while I get the OBS end of this working a little better.
I'm not gonna talk about my actual rating of this beer yet, but it's quite delicious. It is juicy. It is the son of juice. Actually, the side of the bottle says juicy, juicy, juicy. So I think I'm in good shape.
I think we are stuck with what we have. However, this is now. That's how it's going to be on the stream because I can't figure out how to. In my remote desktop, Zoom has taken over the entirety of the window. I don't know how to move it.
Oh no. So it looks like it's mostly there. You've got some of the right side of the screen cut off, so you may want to shrink your window.
Okay. So I'm roughly calibrating what the parts of my screen that are on there. So we're gonna just hold on 1 second. Let me see if I full screen this, if I can do this. No, I have never had this problem before. We're just gonna go with it. All right. So the situation that we have, my travel tracker, I have been back to this periodically, because the airline industry is weird and has some weird data structures. FlightAware, which is the API that I use to get the real-time updates of flight information, it is also weird. And so one of the things that we have is we have the ability to register a webhook for a given flight to say, okay, tell me when there are changes to this flight. And when there are, the webhook I want you to hit is like FlightAware accept status. So this guy right here, FlightAware Integration, this is the one that accepts the webhook information, and then it will act upon it. And this one, if I recall, even is a little bit weird, where I've got to do. Actually, this one is. I was confused. Oh no, we were talking about the one that was XML. That's not this one. So I guess it gives me a JSON push. I crack some information around it, and I save that information. Now, before I can register this webhook, the act of registering the webhook, I have to call it with FlightAware's unique identifier for this flight. One of the really interesting things about the world of the airlines is that things that you might think are unique identifiers are not. Like a flight number is not a unique identifier, and even a flight number on a day is not unique. You need a flight number, an airline, a date, and an originating city. That's the set of information that is uniqueness, because you could have, how you have those flights that like continue on,
right?
And some people are continuing on that flight that may actually be using the same flight number from one flight to the next. So it is just weird. And so, 45 years ago, some of the stuff was set up and it's never changed. So we're kind of playing their game. So ultimately what this means is, I may ingest into my system a flight that doesn't take off for another 90 days. I cannot register the webhook until that flight ID is assigned, and it won't be assigned until roughly 48 hours before the flight takes off. So what that means is I got to sit around for a long time. Now let me pull up my workflow. So this is in fact the workflow I'm going to show you, and this will take a little bit of finagling because I have to make sure that it's on the screen. The workflow, this is what I have right now, is broken because I was trying to fix my workflow, not understanding exactly how the wait for condition works. And so I was trying to make it so that it would wait. What I used to do is I had a 12-hour wait, and I would loop on it. And I would say, if it's not assigned, wait 12 more hours. If it's not assigned, wait 12 more hours, right? And then I was finding that some of these workflows just bailed out. Like some flights never got the webhook registered. I realized it is because by default, workflow has, I believe, a 100 transition limit. And so if it was more than 50 days ahead of time, my waiting every 12 hours would time out after 50 days, and then it would just go nowhere and it would never get registered. And so I actually found this out on the Now Forum trip to Australia. And so I was sitting there trying to fix it in various airline lounges between here and Australia. I was sitting in Fiji actually writing parts of this, and then, trying to do it again in Auckland, and, so, I was actually trying to fix the fix information for flights that we were about to get on. So I tried to do this. In fact, what I have now doesn't even work, because this wait for condition, I thought that I was going to do some kind of, periodic wake up to see if that condition is fulfilled. But in fact, it doesn't. It's only going to check this if there is some change to the record, which effectively makes it useless for my case. So what we want to do is we want to take everything that this workflow is doing, and we want to just start from the beginning, and we're going to redo it as a flow.
Cool.
So I've already got this thing, like the populate flight ID. I have a script include that does this. That's the only thing that we really need. What it does now is it's supposed to wait. It runs the populate flight ID. If it's populated, then it will go down here, and it will register. So these things cross, so you can't quite tell them. But the yes case of this, if it's populated, it will register the endpoint and webhook. Then it checks to see, did we get the alert ID populated, which means that the webhook has been registered. If yes, we're done. If no, we're going to wait 1 minute and try again. We may have just had a transient failure.
Gotcha.
And so this right here is also a transient failure loop, just to say, if we went to get the flight ID and it's not there, wait 5 minutes, try again, wait 5 minutes, try again. So cool. We just want that thing. We want parity with this thing. And I'm going to take it off the screen. We probably won't need to show it again. That was really just for background for the viewers. Now we're gonna go and look over here, and I think I've got a flow. We can even start with the flow that I had before. We can either do that. We can try to start with the flow I had before, or we could even just
maybe make a new one.
Let's just start from the beginning. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm good with that. Flow. So we'll start a new flow, and let's expand this out. We want a new flow, and let's call it register. I'm gonna call it Madrid because I don't remember if I already have one. We just want to make sure that I'm looking at the right one from here on out. I run as user who initiates sessions. This is actually the first time I've seen this, although I have talked about it, but I haven't actually created a new flow since then.
Yeah, that's a new thing too. So you can.
And I think in most cases, like this is probably the sensible default for most things, right?
Yeah, it keeps things safer too. It makes sure that things are running, making sure that you don't look things up you don't have access to and all that good stuff.
Okay. So we want to get FAA flight ID and register webhook. Okay. So then what we're going to do is click to add trigger. Let's do a created or updated. I have a little bit of a method to the madness, because it would be, given the situation that we're talking about, it would kind of make sense to do just a created. But I think what I'm going to do is created or updated, but we're going to run once. So what this is going to let me do is catch up a little bit on the ones that exist. And if for some reason it doesn't start, I can still trigger it, but I don't actually want to have two copies of the same thing running.
Got it. That makes sense.
If any one of them has started, then that's enough. So I'm going to run that against the flight table.
By the way, while you're here, there is a new thing called advanced options, and you probably won't need it right now, but I figured I'd call attention to it because it's right there underneath the run trigger.
Okay, let's look at them.
Yeah. So this is cool. And what this lets you do is imagine a scenario where you're calling an external system, or the external system is calling ServiceNow, and you want to make sure that you don't get into some kind of endless loop going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's like e-bonding and you're saying, push something to them and they push something to you. So we put some things in there that say only run if it's interactive, only run if it's not interactive, that kind of stuff.
So for example, like one of the suggestions about my wait for condition in workflow, people said you could have a business rule that touched it, and then it would make it essentially the workflow wake up and check it. And so, but if you had only interactive, that kind of thing wouldn't work for this. It wouldn't trigger. A business rule would not trigger it if I say only interactive.
So a business rule would trigger if the business rule was not asynchronous. So
okay, but let's like a scheduled job would not do it.
Right, a scheduled job would not do it.
If it was happening from if whatever the initial domino in the chain of dominoes came from a user clicking a button, then it would.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yep. So that's kind of useful. And then the second one underneath this is just run for any user, or don't run for specific users, or only run for specific users. So if you wanted to say only run this thing if it's, say, I don't know, the travel tracker system user ID.
Can you do it by group or only by
at this time, just users. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll leave it with the defaults.
Yeah, I think defaults are good. Just figured we'd call attention to it since it's there.
That's good stuff because I've never seen it before. So that's interesting stuff. Okay. So now let's just start from the top of my workflow and let's re-implement this logic. So step one is what I want to do is I want an action and I want to wait. And where's I actually was doing a demo in Raleigh on Wednesday, and I could not find the timer. What is it called? I want to do the relative time.
So go under flow logic instead of action.
Oh, that's a flow logic, not an action.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That would wait for a duration of time. That was my problem. And I was up there and I was kind of flop sweating and I just sort of moved on. I was like, why am I not finding this thing I'm looking for? So we want to wait a duration of time. And this is something that is better than parity with workflow because this does not exist. I want a relative duration, which is I want to wait for 2 days before flight record scheduled or start time is scheduled. So 2 days before the start time is when I want this thing to move forward. And that should be enough, right?
Yeah, I think that should do it.
So this right here, this flow, this one line in this one flow, I've been wanting for years.
It's exciting.
It is super exciting to me. So now I'm going to come over to my workflow. I don't need to do it on the screen, but I'm really just cutting and pasting my script step from my workflow. So I want to do, and can I do a script? Am I going to have to do an action or do we have a script step action now?
There is no script step action. So in this case, you would want to create an action that does whatever that script was doing.
All right, let's quickly create a new action. And we'll just call it populate FA flight ID. And I want it in travel tracker.
Makes
and input sense. Is, I believe I'm just going to give it, can I give it just a whole glide record?
Yeah, you can just pass a glide record in.
I'll just pass it the glide record. We'll just basically pass it current. All right, so input.
And because of the size of your window, you may have to collapse the data panel on the right just to make it a little easier.
So people can see it. Input variables. Let's add an input. Or actually, let's do this. Let's do a script. I'm just going to cut and paste. I'm literally cutting and pasting the script from my workflow. Ooh, that's not it. Let's try this. Okay.
Cool.
So this is all, all this thing does is it, is that on the screen? It gets the start time. And let's even, just to make this easier, because I'm lazy and we got short time equals, let's say equals inputs.current. And let's just input current. So we'll just call it current. And the value is
oh yeah, so you'll need to create an action
the
input.
outer,
yeah,
the action input. Yeah. And I do that. It's been long enough since I've created one that I don't remember where I do that. Oh, up here.
So yeah, up to up to the left.
Okay.
And because your window is small, just because of the whole zoom thing, if you collapse the data panel over on the right, there's like a little thing that you can minimize the data panel. That'll give you some space.
Okay. So let's just call it current. And what type what would
this would be a reference? So if you're going to pass in a record, okay. Yeah,
call it reference, and a reference to a flight. Okay.
So and then, just to ease my OCD, let's call that the actual friendly name of the input flight.
The friendly name of the input flight over here.
Over up in your action inputs.
Oh, action inputs.
Yeah. So instead of calling, just the label, and then you can refer to it whatever you want internally inside the action. But that's one of the things that helps sort of keep the actions friendly.
And I actually over here, do I want to populate this with the?
Yeah. Now you can populate that with the inputs from the flight.
Okay. So cool. Now current is the flight. Everything else is fine. And in fact, I don't even need an output because, I do want an output. And the output is the flight ID.
Gotcha.
And let's say, oops. Out, flight, FA, flight ID. Equals. See, this is one that I didn't have to do before. No, I don't even have to do that there. Let's just change the current
to outputs.
Outputs.
That makes sense.
And then in outputs, let's create the output. And let's say FA flight ID.
You've got to create the output in your script as well.
Do I have to?
Down under.
Oh, yeah, got it.
Yeah,
okay.
That whole thing.
FA flight ID. And string is fine.
That should be it.
Now, if I come over here, now I populate that with the pill picker. All right. And there we go. That should all be tied together, right?
Looks good.
Okay. All right. So now we should have this in parity. That should be essentially we're duplicating my run script part of that. We'll probably have to do this again for my webhook registration. So now what we'll do is we'll add that action. Oh, look at that. I still have the action from before. Let's assume that works. Get FA flight ID. The flight is, in fact, just this. Then let's say what we want to do is let's make this an if, or let's make this a do until.
Makes sense.
Do the following until these conditions are met. And the condition is that FA flight ID is populated. Actually, I wanted something in the middle here first. Do I want to do an if? Because this may conceivably, like if this failed and I get nothing back, what I want to do is...
Would you want to put that inside the do until? So put your get flight ID in the do until?
Yeah.
Or is that?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. I like that.
And I think you can drag it down.
Can I?
It's over in the far left next to the two. There's a thing that lets you drag.
Oh, that's this thing right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Get FA flight ID. Then we're going to update the record. which is in, I never remember where that is. ServiceNow core, update record. And the record we want to update is the flight record. And the field we want is FA flight ID. And the value is FA flight ID. Okay. And so our do the following until FA flight ID is populated.
Now, did you finish your until condition?
I did not. All I did was name it, but I didn't put anything in there yet.
Gotcha.
So now what we want to do is say, oh, actually, I want the actual value from here. I want the field. FA flight ID is not. Can I not do an is not empty?
I think you can.
The only ones I got, can I say is not and just leave it like that?
Yeah, I think you can just leave it like that.
Okay, we'll do that.
At least we'll find out if you can.
Then what I'm going to do down here, because conceivably we got to here, we've updated the flight record. There's nothing in that thing. It's temporary failure or something like that. So I'm going to do an if, and again, same condition. If no FA flight ID. Now, yeah, I'm really going to trigger your OCD because I think I've done different format every time. Is that, I'm just going to say nothing, is nothing. Then and this is a flow, again, a flow logic, not an action. We want to wait for 15 minutes.
Cool. Makes sense.
And that should just be enough right there, right? So if it does exist, so we'll come down here, we do get FA flight ID. We update the flight record. If there is a flight ID, we don't even go into this loop. We're going to hit this and drop out, right? If this is empty, we're going to come over here and wait for 15 minutes. We come over to the until, and we're going to do it again, basically. So if there's no flight ID, we will wait for 15 minutes. We will loop again. If there is something, we won't do either. Okay?
Cool.
At least that's the plan.
Sounds good. Now, for testing purposes, do we want to put some artificially low values?
Like wait for 30 seconds and then up it later? We certainly could.
Something like that.
How about let's wait for 15 seconds?
I like it.
Okay. We'll do that. Then let's even see if my register webhook, I'm just going to be really optimistic that whatever I did before was reasonable and works. Register that FA flight ID. No. I don't want that. I want the one from the record. Because by definition, if we made it this far, we should have one in the record. So we're going to register the webhook. And then the last thing we're going to do here, the output of that thing should be that alert ID. Like I was saying before, I did the, and in fact, actually, I realized I want to do another flow logic. I want to do another flow until alert ID is populated.
Gotcha.
Because I'm just trying to put a little robustness. In fact, I don't know that in the history of this, I've ever actually seen these any of these APIs fail, but they might. So let's say, so we want alert ID again is not nothing. And in fact, I think it's a numeric is let's say greater than 0.
Now, is the alert ID going to come from the register FlightAware webhook?
It should.
You might want to put the register FlightAware webhook in the loop.
That's exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Do this exact same thing we did before.
Cool.
And then down here, we're going to update the record again, and we're going to update it. Update the record. We're going to update the field, alert ID, and the value should be register webhook, alert ID. Look at that.
Nice, nice. The one thing I would maybe look at is in your condition. I would change your condition to look at the update flight record instead of the trigger, just so that you've got like the latest version of the record to compare against.
Yeah, so you're saying in the do until?
Yeah. So if you go back into the condition in the do
Oh,
until,
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. So, so instead of this, you're saying this. Problem being that is not, let's just say is not empty. Right?
Yeah, I think that would work. We can find out.
We are fixing to find out, as a matter of fact. So now, if alert ID of the record is populated, if an alert ID comes out of this, we'll stop. And at that point, we should have done everything. We would have updated our record with the flight. We would have updated our record again with the alert ID, and we're done. So at that point, we can just exit.
Cool.
Now, let's pick something. This is one I should totally, let me save it before I forget. You aren't by any chance flying in the next 2 days, are you? I guess it's.
I'm flying Monday.
It's, I think, probably too far off, but let's see. American Airlines, flight status. Let's find a flight tomorrow. Let's use one of my, one of my very common flights. Let's do one of these tomorrow. We're going to go ahead and let's create. Okay, there we are. We'll create one of these flights. So let's go over to. Let's create a new flight. Test AA or flow. We would not normally be doing any of this stuff. American airline code AA. In general, it's a bad idea to do this stuff by hand, but 5453. 54, so the flight number is 5453. The origin is Myrtle Beach International. The destination is Charlotte Douglas. The actual start time, we don't want that. We just want the start time is tomorrow at 5:29 a.m.
Cool.
Okay. So let's do tomorrow at 5:29:00. And the end time doesn't really matter, 6:35. Most of this stuff is based actually on origin time, and the rest of it is just sort of falls out. Status is upcoming.
Gotcha.
Everything else here should be FAD, flight number, flight ID. I think the flight ID, if I recall correctly, is actually just a concatenation of those two. And if it's empty, I believe actually there was a transition at some point. We'll see if this works. Cool. All right. And what I should have actually done is, well, no, let's do the test. We want to actually test it because we want to.
And I realized one thing before you test is in your second do until loop, you may want to put a timer in there just to.
Oh, you're right.
Not let it run away.
For exactly the same. So it's same deal. I want an if. No. Alert ID. And then, so we want the output of that. If that is no alert ID, if that is empty, then we're going to wait in for 15 seconds. Okay.
Cool.
Yes. All right. Let's save this again, and then let us test it. And we'll pick that one that we just created to test it.
And it's drum roll time.
Test AAA for flow. Let's run the test. That's a nice.
Kicked it off. Should be waiting.
Get FA flight ID. Not run. Timer is scheduled to wake up Friday, February 1st, etc. Oh, it's still waiting at this point.
1407. 14. Well, so should be waking up pretty much right away. Maybe, and this won't automatically refresh, so you may have to hit that refresh button. Oh,
completed.
So, okay.
Completed. Okay, good.
Cool.
So let's look at this. Let's expand that and see what happened. Look at that.
Nice.
That's the FA flight ID. So this is the whole thing about all this is this must exist. This is their own thing. And in fact, what you see here is, I think probably we're seeing that the JIA indicates this is a code share, like some small regional thing that's ticketed as American. You get to learn some of these nuances as you dig into some of the stuff. That's why this isn't actually AA when they generate it, even though it's ticketed as AA.
Yeah.
This looks like it happened.
And then
if no flight ID, we evaluated false, not run until flight ID is populated. Register webhook. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to register this. Register webhook. I just want to open this to see what happened. This is what we passed in, the FA flight ID. The alert ID is 285-0216, which implies that in fact the alert ID is populated. So now let's go over and let's look at let's just do by start time. It should be, this is the one that I tested. If we look at this guy.
Would you look at that? There's an alert ID.
There is an alert ID.
Holy, wow. So I think that deserves a drink.
Absolutely.
Cheers to that.
A moment of silence. Clink as we
have we so I mean, some things have worked smoothly the first time for us a couple of times, but I don't know if anything that complex has ever worked.
No, right. And bear in mind, let me drag this back over. So this is not the hairiest, craziest workflow that has ever existed, but this is not inconsequential, right?
Yeah.
Now, we were helped out a little bit in time by the fact that I didn't have to redo this because I had a leftover one that still worked.
Yeah.
So this was from my first attempt to do this. This part actually kind of already existed. But and bear in mind too, this has actually simplified, although it's broken and not operating the way I want it to operate. There used to be more transitions because it was wait 12 hours and then there was an if flight ID is populated over here. It would wait 12 hours and try again, et cetera, et cetera. And so another thing that was happening there is I was actually hitting the API every 12 hours needlessly because I didn't have a good way to wait. And all I was really trying to do was just see, if it's ready yet. And so I would ask it, up to 100 or more times, do you have the flight ID? When in fact, this activity over here is really what I wanted to do in the first place anyway. Because I know when the thing starts and I know when it's available, and I could be more fine grained. If it's actually less than that, I could say 1 day and 18 hours or whatever that number is. I can fine tune that because I actually want this to, actually I only want to call it one time because for another thing, this is not a free API. So those cost me, whatever they cost me, 1 mil, some fraction of a cent every time I hit it. But that is actually when you hit it extra thousands of times, then that begins to add up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. So
now let's do, okay. So let's just go completely crazy all of a sudden. Let's activate this thing right now.
Sounds good.
We're going to go directly to activating. Now what we're going to do is some of my colleagues are flying next week. So, and because I realized that, so we haven't had a lot of flights yet this year. So I had actually forgotten that I had been fiddling with this and broke it. So what I want to do actually is deactivate this workflow right now, which I'm not sure what's the easiest way to deactivate a workflow?
That's a good question. Maybe going to properties. There should be
I do an active,
like an active
off.
checkbox or something.
Yeah. Published. Can I depublish it?
This is where I spend so little time in workflow.
Yeah, if you can put eyes on a chat, this is one of those things where our audience knows way more than I do about this.
I'm pretty sure somebody in our audience can probably tell us. So if you're up to speed with us, please drop something in the chat to let us know how to turn the workflow off.
Off the top of my head, other than like deleting it, it's like that's the validate. How do I just want to set it to, I want to depublish it, and I don't know how to do that actually. Open existing new workflow, show context, properties, validate workflow. What I don't have is a set it inactive. I wonder if I have to do that at the workflow view.
Yeah, because I know there's a set inactive button that I've seen in the past, and I didn't see it there. So
yeah, let's not look at the. So I want to look at. I don't want to look. Do I want to look at workflow versions?
I think you want the actual workflow.
But what's the list of?
Go to workflow editor, and then
yeah, let's do. All right, this thing. Can I? See, that just pops me back in here. That's not what I want.
Huh? That's kind of weird.
I am flummoxed. All right. Well, I'm not going to worry about turning it off. But what I am going to do is go into my flights. Let's look at upcoming, all active flights. These are ones, there's a scheduled job that goes through and looks to see something like, I think 2 days after they land, something like that. Or actually, I think it's when an itinerary, there's something like every 12 hours checks to see, is an itinerary finished, which is the last thing in an itinerary done. Gotcha. And when an itinerary closes, one of the things that happens is it loops through everything and makes it inactive. Now you'll see some old things that are in there. I actually went back and turned some things on manually. So I had some data. So there's some old flights from Andrew. So we're going to pick our friend. I guess there's a little bit of privacy leakage. The fact that this is a real flight that a real human is going to be on.
Let's probably just look at the developer portal and see where you guys are going to be at anyway.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change this message is kind of harmless because it'll get overwritten anyway. I'm going to update this.
So that should kick that thing off.
Correct. Now, if we look at the flow context, we should now have, what's the easiest way? Can I look at active flow contexts from here?
Yeah, just go to executions. Those look like sorting.
Yeah, let's do a created. And is that the one that no, that's not the one that just happened.
Happened 1407.
Is there a chance it would take a few seconds to catch up?
Could be. Yeah. So after you've activated, or after you've published a flow, the first time it runs, sometimes it.
Oh, look at that!
A little bit. There it goes.
Look at that! It is in fact waiting. And if we look at it, timer is scheduled to wake up Saturday, February 2nd at 5:20.
Cool.
Flight is, I believe, Monday. Flight is Monday at 5:20. There you go.
Look nice.
Holy guacamole. So now let's go ahead and actually let's do something right quickly for myself, just for myself. And I think I've got list v3 turned on. How do I add a here we go.
Oh, personal.
Dog it. Let's just I'm gonna add message there for a second. Just so I'm gonna add something because I want to touch every one of these things that is there.
So actually, this is a really good opportunity before you hit save.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. What good opportunity? What to do? What?
No, it's okay. I was going to say, so what you effectively are trying to do here is come up with a mechanism where you can kick off this thing manually.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually some really cool stuff in.
Oh, I blew it.
It's okay though, because we can still show the same thing. So
okay, let's show me the thing because I don't know the thing clearly, okay. Or I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, so there's some cool stuff with the APIs now. And so what you could do is if you go back to your flow, we now have the ability to call. There are new APIs for these things. So if you click the ... button, which is kind of in a weird spot because our window's small, click on code snippet. And what we've actually done is here's a thing that will generate a code snippet specific to the action flow or subflow that you're on. And if it has specific inputs, if say it's a subflow that has 80 inputs, it will automatically generate the code for all those.
Nice.
All you have to do is come in here and copy this, and then you could put this in, say, UI action and pass current into this flow and kick the thing off manually.
Oh, cool.
So, and then the other thing is, if you'll notice in the example code there, you've got a couple of options. So by default, it's going to run in the foreground. That's actually synchronous, but you may want to just kick it off, like set it and forget it. And so you can turn it into async mode as well by commenting out the synchronous version and uncommenting the asynchronous version. So it makes it super easy. And then the client-side script is, say you wanted to do this in Service Portal or a client script and a UI page or whatever the case is. We also have a client-side version of this. There's a new kind of ACL you have to set up because you don't want anybody to be able to just kick off any flow. So you have to go and actually set up a flow ACL to say this flow is client callable. But it gives you a lot of options. And the key is this is not just flows, it's actions too. So you can call pretty much anything from anywhere now.
Fantastic. All right. So now we go back over here. If we go back to our flow homepage, we look at executions. We now have 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the waiting state. And if we look at it, this one is waiting till Wednesday, which is probably right because I think the flights are Monday and Friday.
Cool.
So we got one waiting till Saturday. Oh, it's done. We're done.
Nice.
I've been wanting this for so long. Now, did anyone in the chat ever tell us how to deactivate?
Oh yeah. So John Caruso says that you can check out the workflow and then you'll have the option to deactivate.
Oh, okay. Let's do it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You got to check it out and then deactivate it.
Makes perfect sense. That it shows like there was a point in time like the act until I started fiddling with this. I don't think I have done any real meaningful workflow stuff in years.
Yeah.
Years and years. All right. So we're checking it out. Did I check it out? Is it checked out?
I think if you have the checkout button, it means it wasn't. So
okay.
Now click on it. There you go.
Okay.
Now they're set inactive.
Set inactive. Okay. Beautiful. All right. So we should probably still have workflows that workflow contexts that are running. I don't really care. They may be, in fact, oh no, I know that the workflow contexts that exist are bogus because they're actually hung up at this point, right? If we look at in fact, let's go ahead and look. If we look at active contexts, they're probably all sitting and wait for condition. They may have even actually just ran because, or they have just done this because I touched them all, right? So let's look at workflow, active contexts. Did I click it? Active contexts.
There we go.
Executing. Let's pick any of these guys. Started back in November. And they're sitting here waiting until 2 days before. Okay, so that's actually fine. So these guys are gonna basically do nothing because the flow will run. The flow should run to completion. Then that will wake this guy up, and then it'll come over here, and it'll say, populate this. It'll probably try to do it. So it'll probably do it anyway. Is this populated? It will already be populated. Register endpoint, it's already registered, and then it'll just come through. So it might even kind of clobber some stuff that already happened, but that's actually not a problem.
Cool. And thanks, John, for that answer.
All right. So I'm going to close that. So at this point, no further, and we're seriously looking at the production thing that does this. So no workflow context will ever start again. So from this point forward, everything that's happening is going to happen via the flow.
Sweet.
Is there any other flow stuff we want to talk about while we're here? So this was the main stuff. So we used several of the new features here, right? Conceivably, I'm trying to think if there's something in here I would want to do parallel.
So the one thing, oh yeah, that's an interesting feature to show. At least you might.
We'll put a bogus. I'm looking at the execution, not the actual flow. So let's say there was something that we wanted to do in parallel. Let's do. So then we do the following in parallel, and so we could add some actions here. Let's just add anything. Let's say ask for approval. And then let's say we want to do another different thing. I'm going to have to do some minimal. What if I just say done and leave it unconfigured?
I think that'll do it. Yeah.
And then we do another different thing.
Yep.
Let's say hip chat, whatever. Hip chat, post a message, etc. And again, I don't care what happens to it. But now at this point, it's going to do both of these things.
Yep.
And then whatever we put down here is not going to happen until the last one of these things finishes.
And the other thing is, notice how there's pluses underneath each of the actions. These are parallel blocks, which means you can continue to add more stuff in each of those. So you could have multiple steps in each parallel block.
So now what you're doing is now you're doing the equivalent of some of those weird lines in workflows. So if you needed something, because up until this point, up until this release, this was pretty linear. You could have an if, you could have an if else, but you couldn't do much more than that. This do until very much is the draw the line back to the beginning. This is draw, multiple cases out of the thing. So, I mean, this is some sweet stuff.
Yeah, for sure. There's also, we didn't really talk too much about this, but there's a call workflow feature. So if you have existing workflows, say you had some, it's under flow logic as well. So say you had a workflow that was super complex and you wanted to reuse it, or maybe it's using things that we haven't quite accounted for in Flow Designer and Integration Hub yet. You can go out and actually call those, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
Let's see, what else is there? There's the make a decision, which if you don't have demo data, we might want to spend, or you may want to spend some time. This is flow logic as well. At some point in the future, the make a decision is super cool. You can pick a decision table. Maybe, is there anything in there? Yeah, let's just pick one. So
emergency change policy. Okay.
And click done, and we'll see what that does. Yeah, so notice in this case, there's really just one
pick a different one and see. Let's see if it has a different.
Yeah, maybe there's a different one with something else.
Normal change policy. Let's see if that has a few options. So this processing is probably looking up the options, right?
Probably.
There you go.
Yeah, so here's a great example. So you can set these decision tables up, and what's cool is you maintain the conditions that actually drive these decisions in a table. So you can go off into a table and just put data in there. So you can put this flow, you can do all this flow logic. You can define what happens for cab approval and for assignment group approval. But then the actual conditions, the actual data that drives how you reach these conditions, you maintain out of the flow. So you can publish the flow, but somebody who's maybe not an administrator, or maybe it's not an administrative thing at all, can maintain the decisions themselves.
So effectively what we're looking at here is like a switch case.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sort of, and it's also a lot more than that, because if you'll notice on the right, if you scroll down to in the data pane down to like, I think around 5, you'll see that the actual change approval definition record comes through. So you can have this thing also return a record, which means you can not only go down a certain path, you can also get a record. So maybe it's you want to operate on a specific flight based on some conditions, or whatever the thing is, you can have it return that. And so it's super flexible.
Interesting.
I think there'll be a lot of things to explore with that in the future.
Okay, cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and close this out so that I don't actually say any of this stuff.
It's like now the Frankenstein flow.
Now I'm going to go back here and let's look at the flows. Let's just take an extremely quick look at one of the ones that this was also done. What part of what I used to do in here is I used to generate a lot of emails with this. Some time ago. So, and I had rules, which is, for example, when a flight landed, I didn't send it to yourself because I figure you might know it. But for example, if a flight time changed or a flight status changed, if it's rescheduled, I would send it to you because you probably need to know that, and also everybody who is following your updates.
Makes sense.
So I had all these various rules. Our compatriot Jason McKee at one point said, "Why are you sending so many emails? This seems like these are transient. Why are we sending an email of something that has like a 30-second useful lifetime? That sounds more like a Slack update to me." To which I said, "Fair enough, sir."
That makes sense.
So what I ended up doing is, so all the stuff that used to create notifications, I would actually just wrote those same things. I didn't send them to email anymore. I just wrote them into a status table. And then I have this flow that triggers on the status, whether it's created or updated. And if the status is arrived or canceled and sent is false, then it will do some stuff. And conceivably now, this is where your decision table could absolutely come in handy, right? Absolutely. So let's look at this. Let's just say in here, let's done that thing. And I don't want to add a stage. I want to add a thing ahead of that. Can I do that?
You should be able to.
Not getting if I do the plus in there.
Right, there it is.
All right. So let's say flow logic, make a decision, but I would have to set up the table. I'd have to create the table, and the table is all the possible states of that status.
Exactly.
Which is all my, we're kind of at time, but I'm actually willing. Let's play with this for just 1 second. So if I do this, decision table, flight status.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to be how long will this take to set up?
We may actually run out of time here. So
yeah, let's not. But so anyway, this is probably my next thing.
Yeah.
Then what I can do is I can do a lot more robust logic in here. I set up a decision table, and it will have like 6 choices. Let's take a quick bop over into the flights. We can just do this by pulling up any flights. And if we look at one of the records, we'll see that the status could be any of these. Upcoming, scheduled, delayed, in-flight, arrived, canceled, diverted.
Got it.
And these are quite literally, these are the range of things that could come from FlightAware.
Mm-hmm.
So basically I've got 7 choices. So I would create a decision table with 7 options in it. And then over here, I don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
I just do this unconditionally.
Right.
And then status has arrived as a thing. And so some of these may be a no-op because maybe I don't want to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. But and that's kind of the beauty of it is you can set them up. You can always act on them if you want, but you don't have to.
Mm-hmm. And like, for example, I'm not sure I remember if there's I think upcoming actually is not I don't remember if it's a FlightAware one. I think this may just mean it's not like scheduled means I think that flight ID exists.
Mm-hmm.
So it's now in the system and ready to go. So this I think means even pre-system. This is the beginning of the system. The flight could be delayed. The flight could have taken off. The flight could have arrived, canceled, or diverted. And I was telling you the anecdote beforehand that Andrew had a flight canceled sometime in December, which went through a code path for the very first time, and we had bummed out on a syntax error because in the 3.5 or 4 years that this thing has been running, no one's flight had ever been canceled before.
That's too funny.
So then I don't know that I even have anything in the case of diverted. I don't know what to do with that. But if a flight's diverted, but this is a thing though, like if it is diverted, everyone needs to know that.
Yeah.
That means this person who you care enough about to want to know something about their flight landed in a different city than they planned on. So maybe I should know about that. So anyway.
Yeah. Very cool.
So going back over here, you can see, so we would, do some kind of decision with that. But, and then this is like very much the flow designer and integration work idea is, that it took me very short time. And I'm quite literally, I think I did this in the departure lounge in the Fiji airport. And so I did one little change to, and I don't think I'm going to show this because it's got webhooks and sensitive information, but I have the notion of a travel group, which is the set of people that cares about each other's travel. So, we have some that are temporary, like a group of people, like whoever was going to Now Forum or Now Summit or Developer Days or something like that. And you have been in some of these temporary ones and you've been in some of these permanent ones. And so I made it added 2 fields to those travel groups, which are the webhook and the channel.
Right.
So now, that I write it, when I populate this, I also populate those from the travel group. And then, this is just how it gets posted, right? This now propagates into the update, the status update table. And then based on the message in the webhook and the channel, I send it. And so, it could be in our decision, we could do something, which is to say, maybe we do something beyond Slack if it's a diverted or if it's canceled, or, we have some second escalation level. Maybe we call the Twilio API to do a text to speech voice phone call, or I don't know what, whatever crazy thing we do.
Well, and the other thing too is when you think about the structure of the decisions, you could do it like more like a switch case where it's just, hey, here's a bunch of values, go do something with them. Or you could say that the decisions are high priority alert versus standard alert. And then you can set up the conditions of what makes up a high priority versus standard based on whatever the various fields are inside the flight. So you've got a couple options as to how you would skin that.
Interesting. Okay, cool. All right. I am going to, at this point, stop the share. That is cool stuff. So we actually did some more different things solely because the thing worked better than we expected, faster than we expected. So we had some time to kill.
So quickly. I'm so happy about that.
Bear in mind that because we talked a lot before we open that thing up. So this is determinable from looking back at the video, but from beginning of opening Flow Designer to even though the runtime ones where I went back and touched those records, it was like under half an hour. It was pretty close to 25 minutes, bearing in mind that we're talking and drinking and etc.
Yeah.
So, the design goal of getting workflow out of there, was a resounding success. And it took practically no time.
That's beautiful.
So
it's very good.
What more is there to say?
That's about it. So,
all right. Why don't you give me the rating of your beer?
Okay. So it's hard to express how much I enjoy this beer. Actually, it's not. I can just use a number.
It's very easy to express.
I'm actually going to give this a solid 4.75. This is one of my favorite IPAs. I
don't know that we've ever had a perfect 5 on this show. That may be the highest rating ever recorded on Live Coding Happy Hour.
Maybe it's nostalgia. I'm just happy to be here. And
I'm happy you're here too. All right. This is one of those ones where I know this happens to you. Do you ever go back and rate a beer that you have no recollection of, and you have a rating, and the rating that's in Untapped is very different from the one that you're rating now?
Absolutely.
Is that you feel it's like, am I crazy now or was I crazy then? Because this is you give something like a 2.75 and you already have a 4.5 rating in there. It's like, what is happening? Which one of these is the outlier?
And then I'm trying to remember, was it on tap that day? Was I happy? Was it a bad day? I don't know.
So this one, I'm going to say, I know for a fact I've had this before. I have no recollection of what I rated. I'm going to say it's a 4.0.
Yeah, that's good.
I like it pretty well. Sweetwater is relatively local. It's an Atlanta, Georgia brewery. The Sweetwater 420, I think I have said, is effectively like my Bud Light. It's like my ubiquitous. It's like the my MDB, my minimally drinkable beer.
I like the Sweetwater 420. It's been a while, but I enjoy it.
And you can find it basically like every gas station within 100 miles of here,
Nice.
So,
yeah, cool.
Okay. Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate it. Do we have anything from the chat? I don't even have a chat available to me.
Let me just take a look.
We need to address.
Looks like we're in good shape. So,
all right.
Kevin had asked, what's the advantage of turning off workflows in flavor of flows? And I hope we demonstrated that just by showing how easy it is to do some of these things and how, we can build out these constructs.
Yeah. I mean, if the workflow was really hairy, maybe we don't want to do it. But like right now, I actively don't want to have both in there because I don't want them competing for the API. So now that I've got the one that actually is doing what I want closer to what I want anyway. Because I had that one busted regardless, because I had that wait for condition that didn't work the way I expected, right? So it's not going to be doing what I thought in the first place. So at the point where I rewrote my logic, I actually made my whole system inoperable for the parts that I needed. It hasn't really been an issue because it's been over the holidays and it hasn't been an issue, but I took a working production system and broke it by adding that in there. And so I would have had to either fix the workflow or do this flow. And so I'd much rather have done the flow, and the flow was easier to deal with, easier to maintain. It's easier to even look at and tell what is happening. Like you saw the workflow. It was a workflow that wasn't that crazy. It had like 8 nodes and a few transitions, and it's still you still have to parse it and figure out what's happening and understand it. And the flow, you don't really.
And then after you ran that test run and you wanted to see what happened or if things happened, you went in and you could actually see, oh, it did this, it ran there, here were the values. It was extremely clear what happened without going and digging through logs and stuff like that.
And looking at the transition history and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just have better tooling. It's just a more, not to smack on workflow and this is a question that comes up. Like every time we have a thing like this, the question comes up, CMS to service portal. When do I turn off my CMS pages? If they're working and you don't need to change anything on them, leave them.
Yeah.
If your workflow is working and you don't need to change anything with it, leave it. I mean, it's just fine. If your workflow needs to change, then you have a decision to say, is it easier to re-implement this thing from the top down as a flow? Is it easier to change it? Is it easier to factor it down into the minimal thing that has to be a workflow? And then, call it from a flow, because we can do that now. I mean, there's the whole continuum of decisions that you can make, and there's no one answer, right? A lot of times people may want a prescriptive answer from us, and the answer we always have to give can be unsatisfying, which is, it depends. It depends what you want to do. It depends what you want to spend. It depends how many people you have to work on it. If you have an enormous wealth of, manpower and man hours tied up in workflow, and they're rigorously tested and well understood, you may not want to go fiddling with a lot of that. But, if you don't have that, or if you want to move it such that it doesn't require somebody to know workflow. I mean, part of the reason for Flow Designer in the first place is so a subject matter expert who doesn't know a lot about the IT end of things, right? I could have somebody, let's say this was something, let's say we had, somebody who was not at all technical, but they were like the admin for this group, and they were maintaining this flow. Like an admin could maintain this flow.
Yeah, absolutely.
The person who books the travel could say, I want something different to happen on that status change. And they could go into the flow and change the message.
Yep.
And it doesn't require anyone in IT to do it. So anyway,
ton of power there. Use the right tool for the job. I think, that will become clearer and clearer over time as more and more stuff gets added in. And
I mean, I know that there used to be a thing that floated around like a flow chart of use Flow Designer or workflow. And you had all these cases. And one of the big cases, do I need a capability that exists in workflow and doesn't exist in Flow Designer?
Mm-hmm.
And, when the first time I saw that flow chart, that peeled off 75% of use cases immediately because you needed a thing that wasn't there. Well, now it's probably 80% go down the other path.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
For those 20%, you can just call the workflow right from the flow. So
absolutely,
there's ton of flexibility.
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
It's good to have you back. Like we said, the two of us have not done one of these things in a year or more. And it's just like old times.
It is. Hopefully I can be back sometime before a year.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. And we will catch you next time.
Thanks.
Bye. And now we'll have that awkward moment while I try to find the button in the same way that I couldn't find the button before to change the.
I'll talk about the weather. It's 40 degrees warmer and it's 20 degrees out.
Oh, All right. Here we